Hey guys, we got additional information for Mrs. Stranger. We were eagerly waiting for her portrays to be released to be, further able to grasp how good this character will be in the first place. It seems to be on the weaker side of things, but the portrays were the kicker that could change her viability. In this video I will do a quick breakdown of what Mrs. Stranger gameplay will actually look like. And we're gonna of course take a look at her portray, and we will figure out if those are the portrays that she needed, or how viable, how useful will these portrays be, and how much will they elevate Mrs. Stranger, if at all. First, let's break down her gameplay really quickly. There will be a special incantation be accumulated called a moth to a flame. This, except for the very first turn, will be accumulated into your hand on the very left hand side. You will now have to play incantations to the right hand side from a moth to a flame in order for you to move it more and more and more to the right hand side of your hand. Once this incantation would hit the very right hand side of your hand, it would be played automatically. You will not be able to play this actively, and you will not be able to move this incantation. The only way to move it is to play the incantations on the right hand side to this a moth to the flame incantation. Now you can enhance this incantation based upon what kinds of incantations you use to move it. You can see it on your screen. If you use a one target attack or a one target debuff, then the moth to the flame would deal additional damage, and you would further increase the amount of damage you deal by a quite significant margin. You can see this here, 440%, to the primary target. So if you face content in which there's mainly or only one enemy available, it's barely ever the case, right? Then you would increase the single target damage by playing one target attacks, one target debuffs to move a moth to the flame incantation. Now, if there would be, which is the case most of the times or pretty much always, be more than just one enemy, then you would want to use mass attacks and mass debuffs to move a moth to the flame to the right hand side, because this would increase the number of targets by +1. Now normally it would only be a one target attack, right? So if there are more enemies, depending on how many enemies there are, that will tell you how many mass attacks or mass debuffs you will have to use in order for you to move this a moth to the flame incantation to the right hand side. You can then of course further calculate how much critical hit rate or ultimate might you want to add to this in order for you to do this. You see that you need to either play a buff or a counter incantation, and so on and so forth. So you can, what to take away from this is that based on the content that you will face using Mrs. Stranger as your DPS, you will have to change the team around her. Team building will be different around Mrs. Stranger based upon what content you actually face. Now let's take a look at her portrays and then talk about them a little bit. Her portray number 1 says that her insight. Now for every one enemy whose Afflatus guard is reduced to 0, the number of last piece of her self stacks granted to Mrs. Stranger increases to 2 instead of just 1. This is a stack that you will only get this stack by one stack of it by using your ultimate, and it would be consumed upon obtaining a moth to a flame. So this effect here of increasing the number of stacks of this buff granted to Mrs. Stranger will not occur all too often, and the effectiveness of this is not very great. Having just one stack of it from your ultimate is more than enough. Furthermore, a moth to a flame, the number of amplification stacks on the additional a moth to the flame cast by Silent Flutter increases to 3 stacks of each of the 4 types. So look, I just showed you that you can enhance this incantation here, a moth to a flame, by using incantations, right? And based upon what incantation that is, you will enhance the incantation with a different effect. All of these enhancements, you can stack those up to 4 times. Now with the portray, and yeah, every time you would use one incantation, right, you would obtain 1 stack. So you would need a total of 4 incantations played from the same type to maximize the effect. For example, right, you play a 1 target attack or a 1 target debuff. And then you obtain this effect here by increasing your single target damage, and you can stack this up to 4 times. But now with the portray number 1, the number of these enhancement stacks on the additional moth to the flame cast by Silent Flutter increased to 3 stacks of each of the 4 types. So what this basically boils down to is quality of life. You don't have to watch out too much anymore which of the stacks you have. You want to just gain 1 stack of each enhancement, and that's all you have to care about, and then you can go from there. It's simply quality of life. Then her portray number 2 says that a moth to a flame and new life. New life is a buff that you obtain, and you can see this here. Damage taken reduction plus 20, damage bonus plus 40, and penetration rate of a moth to a flame plus 20%. You will get this buff anyways, you don't have to actively worry about it. Then the portray number 2 says that damage bonus increases to 60. So not only is the damage bonus 40, it's now 60. And the penetration rate you gain is increased to 30 instead of 20. So 20% damage bonus plus and 10% penetration rate. Furthermore, the number of amplification stacks on the additional moth to a flame cast by Silent Flutter increases to 4 stacks of the to 4 stacks of each of the 4 times. It is not 3 stacks anymore, but 4 stacks. So here with her portray number 2, you don't need to pay attention to what incantations you play to move a moth to a flame to the right hand side. You can completely unga bunga, and all you have to you don't have to worry about anything anymore. You can play whatever the fuck you want, right? So if you don't want to be changing the team's lineup when you play Mrs. Stranger, if you always want to play Mrs. Stranger in one set team, then you need a P2. I mean, P1 would already be enough, but if you want to play completely brain dead, then you use P2. That's literally all these portrays do. Otherwise, right, without any of these portrays, yeah, team building is a pretty huge thing when it comes to Mrs. Stranger. You can diminish this team building thing by getting portrays. That's literally all these 2 portrays do. And I can now already, you will realize, and just in case you wouldn't realize, spoiler alert, the portrays are pretty ass. This does not elevate Mrs. Stranger like at all, you know. It just, you gain quality of life to make the gameplay of Mrs. Stranger more brain dead. That's literally it. Or, yeah, I mean, we have to wait and see. Mrs. Stranger is going to be released in China by tomorrow. So pretty much in a few hours, in 6 hours from me recording this video, and then we will see gameplay footage, and yeah, we can do a little bit of testing and see what characters she actually will pair well with, and do an analysis of, yeah, the whole numbers there and stuff, you know what I mean? So maybe it will turn out that you will have to play her, or you will really want to play her in a very specific team lineup. And if you want to do this to the maximum amount of efficiency, no matter what content you face, then you need P2. Or P1 would be enough, right? If you have a brain, P1 is enough. But yeah, no, I think I explained everything concerning these portrays. Then, portray number 2 says, photo text instincts and self-deception. Damage taken reduction decreases, changes to 30 from 20%. So, yeah, it doesn't matter. You will do this anyways, right? And you decrease the damage reduction on your enemies by 20%. And with P3, it's 30%. And increases a moth to a flame's critical rate and critical damage to 20% critical hit rate and 40% critical damage. So this is an increase of 10% each for damage taken reduction, decrease, for critical hit rate and critical damage, but only to a moth to a flame. Okay. Then, portray number 4 says, Mask of the Lady. The incantation might, ultimate might, coefficient affecting Mrs. Stranger's own incantation increases to 120% each. Useless. Then, portray number 5 says, Mask of the Lady. That is her insight, by the way. Yeah. Mental damage dealt by a moth to a flame increases to 560 instead to 440. So 120% increase to this damage flat, to this incantation's flat damage output. That is not enough for a P5 at all, but the enhancement effects are also enhanced. So you get more percentages based upon what incantations you use. So everything is gonna be increased here by just a little bit though. Like these numbers here for the P5, they do not add up to say a P5 is gonna be worth it on this thing. Never ever. It's pretty laughable. So there we go. The portrays for Mrs. Stranger are pretty damn bad. Pretty damn bad. Like, the recommended portray here, if there is a recommended portray, right? I explained portray number 1 and number 2. It's quality of life and to make a gameplay more brain dead. Unless it turns out to be via testing later that there is one and only one very specific team composition that you always want to play Mrs. Stranger in. If that would turn out to be the case, then you need at least P1 recommended, and if possible, you would like to get that P2 as well. But portray 1 would then be needed. Of course, I'm gonna make an additional video after I've tested Mrs. Stranger and see all of the analysis, and have done some analysis myself. Obviously, I have to do it myself. People seem to be too incompetent to do this properly. So I will do it myself. And then I will make another video and then I will touch upon the portrays briefly one more time. How come these portrays are useless and what would we need instead of those portrays? Like, first of all, the overall effectiveness, the overall number and percentages increases here are not high enough. This is simply not enough impact overall speaking. And then what we wanted, what we were praying for, or what would have elevated Mrs. Stranger's viability through her portrays would have been to gain more copies in our hand of a moth to a flame, or at least increase the speed of which we can move this a moth to a flame incantation to the right hand side. The best case scenario would have been to give us multiple a moth to a flame incantations into our hand via like P2. Maybe even P5 could have done that. And then P2 increases the speed in which we move that a moth to a flame. You know, something like that. But the portrays don't do either of these two things, and therefore pretty garbage. But here we go, guys. This is all that I wanted to tell you for now. I wanted to show you the portrays for Mrs. Stranger and tell you things about them. That's gonna be about it. I hope that was fun and informative. If you like Reverse1999 content in general, please consider leaving a follow on my channel. I would really appreciate it. But until next time, take care of yourselves, have a great day, and we love this game.